Honorable the Deputy Speaker.
Sorry, sir. Yeah.
As we resume after tea, I will recognize the member for Labre.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to speak on this motion titled, well, I'll just break it down. Be it resolved that this House agree that the government develop a holistic and sustainable national response to climate change, inclusive of solutions to the perennial flooding in Trinidad and Tobago, and the effective management of drought conditions, and the impact of such disasters on the quality of human life. Mr. Deputy Speaker, firstly, I want to thank the member for Caroni Central for bringing this motion today. I really have to acknowledge his advocacy for climate change and the environment. In all my knowledge of his political career, he has been consistently advocating for sustainable development and the environment. So I really have to commend him for his persistence. And it's a pity he's not at his seat, because I would like to reassure him that be not afraid. As long as there's a PNM government in Trinidad and Tobago, you all can rest assured that the environment is in good hands. This government is committed to the fight against climate change and ensuring a sustainable future for all our citizens. Yes, we know we are an oil and gas-based economy, but we have been working assiduously over the years to reduce our carbon footprint and being mindful of the impact that industry has on the environment. Because after the people, the environment is our most valuable resource. Member for Caroni Central, when he served as Minister of Planning and Sustainable Development, would have caused the development of a national climate change policy under that ministry, which addresses policy implementation and integration, as well as mitigation and adaptation actions. So when the member asks via this motion for the government to develop a holistic and sustainable national response to climate change, I can stand here confidently and clearly state that, yes, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we are getting it done. See, the national response to climate change is in our Vision 2030 document. Of the 5 themes, Theme 5, the 5 thematic areas, Team 5 speaks to placing the environment at the center of social and economic development. And this speaks directly to climate change and national resources management. So perhaps he didn't really study the Vision 2030 update of projects that was submitted with the budget documents before making this motion. But I'll give him some time for him to go over that document so he can see exactly where we are making an impact in climate change. One of the long-term goals set out in Team 5 is citizens are more environmentally aware. Now, this goal is directly in alignment with an initiative that the Trinidad and Tobago is embarking on with CARICOM through the Ministry of Energy. It's part of the mandate of something called CARICOM Energy Month, which is observed throughout the region, and quite coincidentally, November is in fact CARICOM Energy Month. So CARICOM Energy Month, which is in its 4th year this year, is a seminal event on the calendar of energy stakeholders, including academia, policymakers, the private sector, youth, and our developmental partners. CARICOM Energy Month is intended to engage a wide cross-section of society and stakeholders to ensure that individuals and organizations understand the impacts of and take action to respond to critical energy issues that result from the impacts of climate change. Looking at the impact of disasters on the quality of human life, maintaining access to energy in the aftermath of a disaster is critical. Many of us would know how difficult it is in the aftermath of a disaster. When you lose power, you feel as though you cannot function. It's as though you have lost all energy. So maintaining that access to energy in the aftermath of a disaster is an important part of looking at the quality of human life. Other speakers, Shogunas West would have indicated, as well as Muruga Tableland. You look at the backdrop of the hurricanes that we had that hit the Caribbean in 2017, those devastating hurricanes that caused extensive damage to electricity grids and disrupted networks, telecommunication networks, and other critical infrastructure. So coming out of those disasters in 2017, CARICOM Energy Month in 2018 focused on building awareness on the climate and disaster resilience within the energy sector. For 2019, the focus for CARICOM Energy Month is empowering people building resilience. And this is being done in Trinidad and Tobago through an art and video competition targeted at primary and secondary school students. So we are educating the next generation. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we are getting it done. The focus of CARICOM Energy Month 2019 throughout the region is focused on, 1, highlighting the opportunities that renewable energy can provide to residents and businesses. 2, increasing the understanding of energy issues of the region and the many solutions to achieve a transformation in the sustainable energy sector. 3, to educate the public and other identified target groups on the opportunities and risks to the energy sector as it relates to climate resilience. And 4, to improve collaboration amongst regional stakeholders to strengthen efforts to address energy and climate resilience issues. And in Trinidad and Tobago, we have taken the action of taking that knowledge and that education to the next generation through our school system. And there are other ongoing initiatives that speak to preparing communities to become more resilient. There's the CORE program under the ODPM, CORE standing for Communities Organized and Ready for Emergencies. Under this program, communities are trained in a wide range of topics, including information on measures to adopt before, during, and after the impacts of a natural disaster. And this initiative is in keeping with the key element of the ODPM's mission to implement proactive measures to mitigate the impact of hazards that threaten the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So this is another example, Mr. Deputy Speaker, of this government where we are getting it done. In the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, we also have control over the National Oil Spill Contingency Plan. This plan delineates responsibilities for the operational response to significant oil spill incidents, which can arise from adverse weather conditions, which are happening more and more frequently with increasing severity. This plan ensures a quick response to minimize or prevent damage to the land and marine environment. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this is just another example of this government when I say we are getting it done. All of these measures, and some of the measures that would have been indicated by Muruga Tabelan and other speakers, these measures speak to managing the impact of climate change. But we are an oil and gas economy, and we cannot ignore our role in contributing to climate change. Member for Chaguanas West would have gone into great details to outline what climate change is. He spoke about greenhouse gas emissions, and he went at great length to outline the role that Trinidad and Tobago plays as an emitter of carbon dioxide. So yes, we emit 57 million metric tons of CO2 equivalents annually. On a per capita basis, we are in the top 2 emitters per capita, but not in absolute value. So let's not confuse the per capita number with the total impact that we have on the global climate. But given that our per capita statistics is so high, it is imperative that we aim to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, notably from energy production, industry, and transport, as this is critical if we are to mitigate climate change and meet the targets set out in the Paris Agreement, to meet our very own nationally determined contributions, which we committed that we would meet. Our targets: 10% renewable energy by 2021, 15% reduction in national emissions by 2030. Now, one strategy in achieving this reduction in carbon emissions is the utilization of clean sources of energy and the promotion of renewable energy and energy efficiency throughout the country. So the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industry, we have been speaking, this government has been speaking about our efforts at maintaining these targets. And the ministry earlier this year would have put out an RFP for renewable energy power generation projects. And we had recently had a bid opening where we received 11 proposals that combined offer a total of 130 megawatts of renewable energy by wind, solar, wind and or solar PV. On the basis of the proposals, we're on a build, own, operate basis. Now, these bids are currently under evaluation, and an announcement will be forthcoming. Now, this project has been on the drawing board for some time. It would have been spoken about in successive years at the annual budget debates. But, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I can say conclusively this time that we will be making an announcement on who will be given the opportunities to partner with us in providing renewable energy. So again, Mr. Deputy Speaker, this is another example of we are getting it done. Another project that's been on the drawing board for an even longer time is the waste to energy. Member for Caroni Central and Chaguanas West would have spoken about the initial work that they did in looking at our waste policy, and the concept of going into waste energy generation would have come out from the previous administration. Well, I'm pleased to say that we did go out initially with expression of interest, where we got numerous responses from many companies internationally with local partners who were interested in developing waste-to-energy plants in Trinidad and Tobago. We evaluated those expressions of interest and then invited all the players to submit bids in the RFP. I'm pleased to say that when the RFP closed in August, we did in fact receive 2 bids, which are currently being reviewed. So yes, members opposite started the idea when they were in government, but again, Mr. Deputy Speaker, this is another project that I can clearly say we are getting it done. There are other avenues that we are working on with our energy companies. So our major players in the energy sector are also our major emitters. And we are working with them and looking at the future transformation of our energy sector into a low-carbon energy future. The trend towards energy generation in the future could very well go into moving from carbon sources and moving to a hydrogen economy. And so we are starting to look at, do the early work in how we can transition the Trinidad and Tobago energy economy into a hydrogen economy. We already have facilities that could easily allow us to transition, because ammonia is a medium for transporting hydrogen. So we anticipate a future where ammonia would no longer be primarily for fertilizer and agricultural base, but really an energy source as a source of hydrogen for power generation. Now, we are exploring avenues in energy efficiency that are more than just changing light bulbs and turning off lights. We have to look at the way we work, our behaviors. And there are tremendous savings that can be obtained from just managing the way we operate. Cabinet recently developed an interministerial multidisciplinary energy efficiency committee led by the Ministry of Public Utilities with representations from the Ministry of Energy, the Energy Chamber, NGC, the Ministry of Planning and Development, and other major energy stakeholders. And they are working at coming up with our energy efficiency policy. The document has already been drafted. It's currently being reviewed by Cabinet. And when it's finalized, this committee would then work up, because the document also has an implementation plan. So we are moving from just policy and thoughts into an actual implementation plan, whereby we will start moving ahead with significant energy efficiency projects being implemented. Now, there are many ways in which energy companies in the oil and gas sector can obtain greater efficiencies, and also in looking at reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. So with some of our major E&P companies, we are looking at applications whereby we can reduce emission of carbon compounds. We're looking at some platform modifications where it's possible we can rearrange how the platforms are designed so that in cases where there is venting of methane, we can probably replace that with flaring of the methane to carbon dioxide. Now, although carbon dioxide is the main culprit in greenhouse gas emission, methane molecules are 40 times more potent a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide, and there are applications, there are situations in the natural gas industry where methane is vented into the atmosphere. And we have been working with all the gas companies to ensure that we minimize venting of methane as much as possible. So options to minimize methane venting would include replacing the vent with a flare. So converting the methane into carbon dioxide significantly reduces the greenhouse gas potential of the gas that's emitted. And there are certain applications now, well, in pipeline operations, when pigging operations are done, there are sometimes venting of methane. So we are working with the National Gas Company in having portable flare devices that can be taken on location so we can burn that gas rather than have it vented. So all these things we are working at is reducing our total CO2 emissions in keeping with our obligations under the Paris Accord. There are significant efficiencies that we can gain in power generation. There's cogeneration technologies implementing steam or hydrogen, or the basic combined cycle gas turbine power generation, which would increase the output without additional carbon emissions. And I'd have to, a good example of that would be the TGU power plant in my constituency of La Brea, which has the highest efficiency of all the power plants within the country. So through these initiatives, I can clearly say that when it comes to tangible attempts at reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we are getting it done. We're looking at efficiencies in the transportation sector. In his budget presentation, the Minister of Finance would have spoken at length about the incentives we have for electric vehicles, for CNG vehicles. However, there are other initiatives that can be taken place in the transportation sector in reducing emissions. When you look at the energy companies and their transportation needs and for logistics and doing their operations, they can make decisions around choice of mode of transport, whether you use helicopters to access offshore platform or you use seagoing vessels. And when you use seagoing vessels, what fuel these seagoing vessels use. So if you're replacing the fuel, seagoing vessels from diesel fuel to cleaner burning fuels like LNG powered ships rather than diesel, these are clear actions in reducing our carbon emissions. So the mere fact that we are having these discussions with our partners in managing the logistics of their transportation to reduce their carbon emission, this shows, Mr. Deputy Speaker, another examples that we are getting it done. When you look at the large number of ships that call on our ports, now many of these vessels are diesel vessels, and when they come to shore, they have to continue running, and these vessels have their own generation, which would use their main fuel, in most cases diesel. But the provision of shore-based power to these vessels would reduce their consumption of diesel and thus reduce their emissions while they are berthed at our port. So these are some of the initiatives that our main energy exporting companies are considering for providing shore-based power to the vessels that come to load product so that they will no longer have to burn their fuel that emit high carbon. So, because all these emissions add up. When you look at the amount of vessels come to Point Lisas, come to Point Fortin, and the length of time they spend alongside, those emissions could add up. So by providing shore-based power, we'd eliminate that amount of emissions. So all these little initiatives, they all add up, and again, this is another example where, as a government, we are working to get things done. Madam Speaker, as a government, sorry, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I apologize. Mr. Deputy Speaker, as a government, we can implement any number of initiatives. We can come up with any number of policies, we can write and launch any number of books on sustainable development that we want. But the key requirement to our success in mitigating climate change is the minds of our people. Our behavior is the rate determining step to determine our success at climate change mitigation. So our task, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as a parliament, is to educate our people. And I wish to thank the member for Caroni Central. Now that he is here, I can say it to your face. And I want to thank you for bringing this motion so we can have this discussion in Parliament. Because our people are watching. Our people are watching. And I also have to thank the member for Chaguanas West. Again, because he went into great lengths to inform all our constituents who are watching on the theory, on everything about climate change, so they understand now. So if they happen not to have known, they got a nice refresher course in what is climate change, what is a greenhouse gas, how the greenhouse effect takes place, and he went at length and explained the impact of the melting of the Greenland ice sheet. Well, I'm not sure if that was Caroni Central or Chaguanas West. And Moruga Tablan as well. So persons, bringing this motion here and giving us an opportunity to have this discussion on climate change was a good refresher for our people. Because it is our people who need to take action. So this really is a chance of us as responsible parliamentarians, to let our population know that they have the single most critical role to play. Mitigating climate change involves change of behavior. We have to change our actions. We have to change our attitude towards energy consumption. Member for Chaguanas West spoke at length about water availability. I know he has a passion for water. Being the Minister of Water Resources, water is, every time he gets up to speak, he talks about water. I understand that. But one of the areas that we have not placed enough emphasis and mention on, apart from water conservation, is a simple act of rainwater harvesting. Yes, he mentioned that he seems to think that the Ministry of that WASA is currently praying for rain. But when rain does fall, and we do have excessive amounts of rainfall, it pains me to see buildings, large buildings with extensive guttering systems that direct that runoff water into the ground. Because it goes into the ground for WASA to subsequently extract it from the ground and pipe back into the house, into your homes. That's extremely inefficient because it takes energy for WASA to get that water back to your homes. It takes all the infrastructure. So rainwater harvesting is something that we need to consider alongside with water conservation. But when persons start doing rainwater harvesting, they will understand, they will appreciate even better the impact of all their daily activities and how you use water. So when we talk about water conservation, we should also include rainwater harvesting. But as I was saying, our people, our residents, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, they are the ones that have the greatest, that are the determinant in our success at mitigating climate change. Now, in the residential sector, there are numerous initiatives, there are numerous actions that people, homeowners, everyone, residents can take to help us attain our Paris Accord commitments and mitigate climate change. Not just to change out to more efficient LED lights, light bulbs, which would use less energy. But we also want to look at the type of air conditioning units that we have. So yes, we member from Maruga Tableland would have mentioned that the average temperature outside has significantly increased. Our maximum temperatures in Trinidad and Tobago has increased significantly. A day is easily 34 degrees outside and climbing. Our new normal minimum temperature seems to also be on the increase. So with that increasing heat, more and more homeowners are seeking to install air conditioning units into their homes, because some time back we moved away from the old colonial style buildings where there were ventilation blocks built into a structure, and we start closing up our homes, and that prevents the influx of natural ventilation. Crime. So with that reduction in natural ventilation entering our homes, the heat gets into your home, and the concrete maintains that heat, so our homes are hotter. So more and more persons are installing air conditioning units. But in deciding which air conditioning unit to buy, there are various types, but if we start thinking in terms of energy conservation, we look at the inverter type AC units, which use less power. So that's another decision that homeowners can make in determining how to air condition their homes. Builders in designing homes, we need to at least have provisions for higher level ventilation, some ventilation systems, so that air can pass through your homes to reduce the requirement for air conditioning. Not only has energy saving implications, but it has economic implications as well. Yes, well, I spoke about the LED bulbs. So people, the 1.3 or 4 million people that we have, this is your responsibility. We sit here in Parliament and we talk about it, we enact the laws and put the incentives to encourage persons to be more responsible, but it is the individual citizen who will determine Trinidad and Tobago's success in reducing our greenhouse gas emissions and our success in sustainable development. Water heaters. Many of us have electric water heaters, but if we look at islands like Barbados, where solar water heating is the norm, if we start incorporating some of that, we would be reducing our energy consumption. We would be significantly reducing our energy consumption. We would be significantly reducing our electricity bill. And while we're on the topic of electricity bill, sometimes it may be that more than just peer pressure, we may need economic incentives to encourage persons to be more responsible. But I will leave that for the Minister of Finance to discuss on another day. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to say that for Trinidad and Tobago to be sustainable, our people have to want this. It is all of us. It is we, Trinidad and Tobago. It is we, the members of the government. It is we, the members of the opposition. It is we, the citizens, who have to collectively act to get this done. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we all have to work towards getting this done. And with those few words, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I thank you.
Leader of the House, you on your legs, right? I am, sir. All right, I just need to be sure because I was looking at Caroni Central. I recognize member for Aruka Maloney.
Don't recognize me, sir. Don't recognize me. Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that this House will now adjourn to Wednesday, the 27th, is it? Yeah, Wednesday, the 27th day of November at 1:30 p.m. At that time, we will do the bail amendment number 2, Bill 2019.
What time?
1:30.
1:30.
Yeah.
Honorable members, the question is that this House do now adjourn. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? I think the ayes have it. In accordance with Standing Orders 11 and 12.1, this House now stands adjourned to Wednesday, the 27th of November, 2019 at 1:30 p.m.